We just say a prayer and then we will get started. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Say something, he might even do meditation, but then he asks people to.
So really very nice to see you all and have a satsang, even though not in person. I think these kinds of satsangs are important, not just from a question answer standpoint, which is of course good, but also being in the company of others that have similar thoughts, similar lifestyles, and we miss that, not being able to do so in person. But at least this is a substitute for that to a certain extent. So I should tell you that we have a plan in the summertime, which has been really requested and instigated by Swami Viditatmananda. And he said that I think what you should do is to bring everyone that is following your classes together at the Sailorsburg ashram in the summertime. So we are actually planning to do that. I will give you all the details and request if you could possibly join. I think it'll be a wonderful occasion for us to spend a week together at the ashram. I requested Swamiji that I will be happy to teach one class, but Swamiji should really take the bulk of it. But he would not have any of that. He says, I want you to be taking all the classes. And then he might actually, he will be there also, and he might also pitch in once in a while. So that's the plan. It'll be in the week of June 18th to the 25th. And, but I will give you more details about it. And I look forward, hopefully the COVID situation would have been resolved even better. It's already much better. But then hopefully if that's okay, I think it'll be a wonderful occasion for us to get together for 1 week. So anyway, with that, I will just see if you have any questions that I can answer. And even otherwise, if we have time, you can just please tell us about yourself, what you're doing, and I would be delighted to get to know some of those your details. So with that, I leave it to Chandra to organize the question answers.
So namaste everyone. If you have any questions, please. This is an impromptu session, so you can raise your hand or just ask Guruji the question. If you raise your hand, I'll call by sequentially by your name. Please go ahead.
So I think while you are thinking about some questions and so on, I thought I would just, this is just impromptu. I'm just thinking that perhaps I can make a few general comments about our study and so on. So I think that we've been talking about that in our classes. And one of the things that really has become very useful to me in my progress, I would say in the last, I would even say like in the last 5 to 7 years, or even shorter than that, um, is to turn the attention towards the qualities and glories of the entire creation created by Ishvara. And to see the world around us as an experience that one can just observe and enjoy, but not get overly worked up on it. You know, sometimes it is difficult to do. Recently, one of the students, Shanti Kumar, had written to me that there was a big tragedy that happened to a friend of his whose daughter got murdered and all kinds of things. So when that happens, there's certainly the sense of observation and even enjoyment is mitigated. One wonders, why does that happen? So in our Shastras, it is written that it is all in the creation, and it's very possible that you may not be able to have the kind of progress in this life, but it's a long play, multi act play, and so one has to just accept it the way it is. But in the meantime, the attention should be towards Ishvara's glory working through each one of us. And that is another exploration. So if I can just summarize it, I don't want to go too long because this is really more of a satsang. If I can just summarize it, we have two choices. One is to explore the world, and as we normally do, in terms of what works for me, what doesn't work for me, how do I make friends, how do I get a better job, all those kinds of things. And this is what is a good thing for us to start with in the life. But really, sooner or later, according to circumstances, we need to turn our attention to something even greater. And that is to explore the vision of Ishvara in our lives. And if we do that, the amount of work involved, the amount of thinking, the amount of mananam, the amount of action, the effort, may be the same. It isn't going to be diminished drastically, but the results are much better because the boundaries of the qualities and the glory of Ishvara are so much more. To name a few, the glory of working in the outside world has limitations. Death is certainly beckoning. Disease is beckoning. Disappointments are there. So there are limitations in that. But to explore the glories of Ishvara through our lives has none of those. In fact, has just the opposite. There is no death. There is no disease whatsoever. There is no disappointment. But it requires a lot of work and exploration. And the study of Vedanta really amounts to an internal exploration of Ishvara working through each one of us. But if we do that, the same amount of effort that we are already used to, and in fact, many of us are very good at it because we have been disciplined, we have studied, we have accomplished some things, so we are used to the effort. the same amount of effort now redirected towards an internal exploration of Ishvara working through us has so much more potential. And this is what I have personally experienced in the last 5, 7, 10 years. Before that, it was really understanding what is being said, what are the Upanishads message, and so on. But really speaking, at the end, it really depends on each one of us, on how committed we are in following this internal exploration rather than the external exploration. So anyway, all of my classes and so on try to express that because I take a lot of satisfaction in whatever I gain from this study. I want to share it with you, because if it works for me, then it must work for you in one form or the other. So I'm really very happy to do that. By my own progress and my own sense of satisfaction goes side and side with my teaching. It is not just I'm sitting there just saying, I just want to show you these guys. No, it's every exploration, every teaching is as good for me as it is hopefully for you. Anyway, I just wanted to make some comments about that. In the meantime, I'm really waiting to see if you have any questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Yes, anyone who has a question, just unmute yourself and then please ask the question.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Namaste, Guruji, and namaste to everybody. Thank you very much for unfolding the situation which my friend and myself we were going through. What I was looking at is in two aspects. One is the response to the situation by a Jnani is above the impacts of emotions, as we learn from that. But most of us are students at various stages of growth, learning.
Yes.
So the intensity of the emotional distress is proportional to our growth.
Yes.
So as I was listening to some of the teachers of Harshavidya, is that it all depends upon the FIR principle, which he was talking about. The frequency of our distress to a situation and the intensity of our distress and the recovery of our distress, how fast we recover from the situation. We are bound to get affected, but how fast we recover, reflecting on the teachings. Again, if we the frequency, how often and what situations we get impacted. So we need to strengthen the frequency and intensity. Even for a small thing, if we are distressed too much, then that's also not good. So proportionately, that intensity distress has to be understood. I think that was a very good message I got it, and from your teachings too. So it is not a switch on and off.
Yes.
We are bound to get affected, but reflect on the teachings and then we overcome it.
I think those are excellent thoughts. I know they came from the teachings of Swami Paramarthananda Ji, and he is just a very, very experienced teacher with dealing with many of these situations. And those ideas, those comments, those suggestions are excellent, really.
Yeah.
And and I think this is what happens as we go through the life studying Vedanta. Just the students of Vedanta, the people who are not students yet have a different set of issues to deal with. But the students of Vedanta, the progress has to be measured in those terms. Because our mind, of course, is a very naughty creation. It will say, hey, you've been studying all this and you're still getting angry, and why are you doing all this? So our own mind questions our progress. But I think to be embedded in these kinds of gradual improvements in our responses to situations are the ones we should really adhere to. We should just silence I wouldn't say silence the mind, but quieten the mind and saying, I know what I'm doing. And I don't want to be that impatient, but it is happening one thing at a time. And then it accelerates. And then you can see that the moment you stand up to your own doubts and your own mind's questions, to that degree, all the things you talked about, the FIR, become much more effective. So I think those are excellent ideas. Thank you so much.
Guruji, one more thing I would like to ask is, what would be how a Jnani would have reacted to a situation like this when somebody close to him, known, were brutally murdered and done that? Is it just, no, it's all, everything is the act of God, unaffected emotional?
So it's interesting. This sort of situations had occurred many times during our life when we were studying with Swami Dayananda ji. And Swamiji, I mean, even in my own life, I've had perhaps not the tragedy to the kind of extent that you mentioned, but people that have died prematurely and so on. But certainly in studying with Swami Dayananda, these situations occurred many times. And I remember his advice very well. And that was, don't try to pontificate at that time. Don't try to go to someone and say, Bhagavad Gita says that, no one dies and so on and so forth. Those things are not going to be receptive by this person who is so intimately affected by the tragedy. Don't do that. At that time, you should be empathetic to the sorrow of the person. At best, what you can say is that in time, it will be okay. Swami Maheshananji gave this very interesting example, and he repeats it many times, because all of the people have really had similar experiences because their students and friends and so on have had tragedies and so on. So Swamiji said that there was one student whose wife died prematurely. She had, I don't know whether it was a disease or I forget what it is. And he was just completely thrown off the rocker. His life was unexpected. His children were growing up and so on. He didn't know what to do. He cried with Swamiji and Swamiji, and Swamiji, just try to just do exactly the same thing, being empathetic and so on, not try to pontificate all of that. Then he said, less than 4 months later, I was going in a car and I saw the man having chaat on the corner with some friends, laughing away. And he says he didn't notice me pass by, but I saw him. And he says that made me so happy because our inner self is Ananda. So any kind of a tragedy provides a temporary blockage to it. But after a while, he says within 4 months, I was amazed that his life became normal. He's enjoying it and so on. And his wife, of course, has taken on another life. So I think to answer your question, what Swami Dayanand used to say was, sympathize with tell them. Only thing you can say is that, please, this will be okay in the end. So just stick with it and so on. And then don't talk about Vedanta at that point. Absolutely not. You should be insulated from it, but don't try to make the other person insulated for the time being. If the person should ask, why did it happen and so on, then you can provide whatever wisdom is there in the class, but not really flaunt it in the eyes of the person who is so badly affected by it.
I was trying to ask, what would have been the response by a Jnani in this situation? For
So
his own people.
Oh, no. The Jnani, by definition, will just smile internally. It just smiles. It's kind of like somebody in a dream who has gotten murdered. How would you feel? You will wake up. You will wake up from it and it says, oh, wow, that was really something. That happens to all of us. We have tragedies in our dreams and we wake up. In this situation, the Jnani has already woken up. So it is really just a complete play for him or her. And so internally, no, absolutely is no effect whatsoever. You just bow to Ishvara and says, whatever, it's your doing, but I'm okay. Yeah, there's no effect internally. No.
Thank you.
Anyone has a question, please go ahead. Unmute yourself and please ask.
Namaste. Continue with this same line of talk. I know it's a play and it's all illusion and all that, but then why some souls have to be brutally murdered and feel that? Why that is that? The karma or what is it? Thank you.
So Darshana, that's exactly right. It is Ishvara's response to whatever has happened in the past in the person's life, and what one has to see is that there is no gap. The Ishvara's creation is so full of knowledge, so full of completeness, that even a hint of an error cannot occur. Like I just gave 9 p.m. rather than 9 a.m. That kind of an error does not occur in Ishvara's. It's not possible. Because he is so the only thing we can talk about and the only thing we can think about is, how can such a tragedy all of a sudden, which was were not known, happen? in this case. Now, I can just tell you in one thing that Shanti Kumar had written to me about the background of these persons' life, the marriage and some of the failures of bringing up and so on. So, and I wrote to him back also saying that in that case, we can see ourselves that if we fall short of certain ideals, then we suffer. If we don't take care of certain situations, obviously the health of our own body is a very classical example. If you have been abusing good food for all your life, or not abusing, but not having good food, then it's very obvious. So in those cases, to see the result of a bad situation is understandable. What is not easily understandable is when sometimes seems to be going well, like someone who is recently married and had a very wonderful life and so on, and they get killed in an air accident. So there one's mind gets completely upset. How is that possible? And a non-student of Vedanta can obviously be very upset by something like this and not understand and even question whether there is Ishvara. A student of Vedanta, on the other hand, has to see that there are no gaps anywhere. Whatever happened, even though the life was wonderful, must have had roots in the past. That's all we can say.
The karma.
So based on that, yes, it is not, when we say simply karma, that doesn't really completely explain. We have to really understand that there is a complete action and reaction system. In one of the classes, I just talked about the word Narayana. So the word Narayana means Narasya Ayana. And so in the explanation of the word Narayana, what is said is Narayana and Vasudeva. So both of those words talk about two things. One is the instantaneous and appropriate reaction by Ishvara to your own actions. Instantaneous. It's not like you have to think about it and say, oh, let me think about it and so on. It is completely instantaneous and completely, if you may use the word, computerized. This is number one. The second one is that it is Vasudeva, which means that it is very specific to you. Very specific, because the Ishvara dwells in you. And so it's not as though there was some impersonal nature for it. It's very, very personal to you. And so, so the karma and karma phala, just the words make us go to sleep. Oh, it's karma phala, karma. But there is much more to it. And as you progress in the teaching, you begin to realize that whatever happens, I don't know the reason for it, but there is no reason to doubt that it is appropriate. Yeah.
Surendra, you had a question? Did you want to unmute yourself and ask?
I'm sorry, who did you say had the question?
Surendra did? Surendra had his hand up. Hi, Surendra.
I think he has muted and gone, so
Okay.
somewhere. Go ahead and somebody else.
Yeah.
Namaste, Vijayji. I'm wondering about the responsibility of maybe Gyanis to reach out to help others in need. If a Gyani who has realized and embraced this knowledge fully, or even Vedanta students who are very advanced, if they are seeing needy groups in their lives, everyone knows of groups of people who are needy and could use help. How is there a responsibility for a Gyani to extend him or herself or reach out to help others?
Yeah, those are good questions. And one that really confront us as teachers and committed students and so on, Molly. So yeah, good questions. I guess my thoughts based on what I've been taught and so on is that while you are in the process of being a Jnani, you should help people as much as possible if they want to be helped. Okay, you don't impose yourself. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is this is Ishvara's creation. Tragedies happen for a reason. It is much bigger than you and I. And we should do whatever we can to help out. But if we have a feeling that you alone have the responsibility, that is not correct. It is the responsibility of Ishvara, and to the extent you can help in teaching, in helping out physically and emotionally, please do so. But do not worry about it. Don't be concerned about it. Don't feel bad if you're not able to do anything, because this is much larger. And so this is one thing. Then, so this is when you are actually not a Jnani yet, but you are still studying and so on. If you become a Jnani, then we have no preset ideas, because they say that they are Jnanis who don't teach at all. They just sit at one place and they don't really, and there is nothing wrong with that. They don't need to teach, because, and there are a lot of Jnanis who have not studied in fact, I think the classical example of that was Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi was really not a teacher, even though he was Jnani. And and he was coerced into becoming a teacher because people said, we want to learn some. So he wrote some books and so on. But in the books, he has not, he has come out with his own ideas on how to, search for yourself and so on. Some of them are not exactly the same as it is in the Shastra. Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, I find that it is rather homegrown rather than the traditional Shastric example and so on. And all stemmed from the fact that he was a very happy person. He had accomplished everything. And if somebody came to him, that he would explain, but otherwise he's not going out and doing anything. And then you find others like Swami Chinmayanandji and Swami Dayanandji who feel, my God, this is too little for me to keep to myself. I want to really teach as much as possible. That's fine too. And so once you become a Jnani, there are no set rules on what you should do. If you're not a Jnani yet, then you should be open for teaching, but only I just tell you my own example, because when I got a glimpse of the truth about this early on, I was very anxious to really tell others about it. Anybody I could get hold of, that I think I've given you examples that my own sister, one of the dearest people to me, I was waiting to talk to her and say, and so this is exactly what is talked about in the first Brahma Sutra, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. And so Swami Maheshanji has pointed out that that Vedavyasa didn't say, now I'm going to tell you about Vedanta. What he said was, if you want to know, here's what you need to know. And so what I found in my initial dealings with people was that I was too anxious to convey. They were not ready. They were not really help. Does my help not extend to other things? To the extent that I can, I do it. Money or some other friendship or something. My main objective is the teaching, and the teaching is now observed in my life for only people that want to learn. Because I find, including my own family and others, if they're not ready to learn, it is completely wasted. And I get disappointed, they get disappointed. It's not the right thing to do. Let them lead a life the best way they can. But if you do find some students who want to learn, then the opposite is true. You better get yourself ready to help that person. So kind of a long-winded answer, Molly, to your questions, but there is a variety of different things that you need to do. I would say that in general, you have at best a shared responsibility with a sense of awe towards Ishvara's thinking, and whatever he does, he's much more concerned about helping than you and I are. And if he wants you to help, then your thoughts will go in that direction, that I think I want to help in some, and follow it by that. But don't force it to a point that it is my responsibility and I am remiss in not doing it. That's not necessary.
Thank you. That's a very helpful answer.
Surendra, do you have a question? Please unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, okay. So Vijay, there's a question that I've been asked many times, that once you're going through certain knowledge as a student, and you understand very well, you're very clear, but then at the time of crisis, when something is thrown at you, that knowledge doesn't come to you right away. So my response, and they're asking is, what can they do to improve that situation, that it comes to them when they need it? So my response was, and I want your views and your confirmation and what my was that abhyasa and vairagya, and abhyasa including vichara. And also a lot of time people ask this question, why me? So I need your thoughts on those two things.
So let's take up the last one first. Why me? And I think that's very similar to what we were talking about when Darshana had asked the question. And my answer to that was both the Narayana and Vasudeva. And I had said that the Vasudeva means that there is a very personal relationship between the Jiva and Ishvara. And so that is incontrovertible. There's no breaks in that and so on. It's all perfect. So given that, why me means that why not you? Really speaking, I mean, you cannot say that to someone.
Yeah.
But I'll give you one interesting example, just to make that point on the why me. We had a son born in about 46, 47 years ago, my younger son, with a severe problem. He had a cleft lip and palate and almost did not survive. He could not suck. His lips were not functional, and so on. For those who are doctors will know what a serious problem that is, bilateral. And so my wife and I were really in shock. And but then I had already started to learn. I had already met Swami Chinmayanand by then, and so the amount of shock was mitigated to a certain extent. I said, whatever it is, and so on. But during that whole process, I discovered the depth of my wife's character that I had known before. She was a happy-go-lucky person, and so on and so forth. One of her closest friends said, "You must be saying, why me?" And her response to that was, that's a ridiculous question. She is not really a student of Vedanta, although she's been studying and so on, so she's not that committed to it. But she had enough wisdom to say some wonderful ideas. And that was, Ishvara thought that I will be able to take care of this child. And she said that in the very beginning, and she proved it. It is an amazing. Our son has gone through 12 surgeries. He's turned out to be a wonderful man, all because of the acceptance and love of his mother primarily. She was dedicated to it, saying, why not me? Because I am the one who was given this responsibility. Ishvara must know what he's doing. So I'm just sharing all these details with you, and you cannot talk about this, why not me, and so on and so forth. But in expressing your ideas, what you need to tell the person is that it is really all, between you and all of you and me, all tragedies in life are really the best thing that can happen to us. We don't know that at that time, but this is exactly what Rudram is all about, that it is given as a gift to you, that please turn towards me and forget about these trivialities of life and so on. And so why not me is to be communicated in a very nice manner, so obviously you have to see what the situation is. Is the person ready for me to do that? But the trend of the thinking should be like that. Okay, so that's what. Now, your earlier question was about being, why doesn't the knowledge work when you're faced with some difficulties? And you were saying that Abhyasa and Vairagya were the two things that you recommend to them. Yes, I think that those are both appropriate, perhaps less for Abhyasa, more in the sense of what Shanti Kumar was talking about, the FIR, the frequency, the intensity, and recovery. And yes, if you study more and more, all FIRs become more conducive to you. And so if that's what Abhyasa means, yes, absolutely, so do so. And Vairagya, of course, means that Vairagya means that you are beginning to do two things. One is to appreciate the independence of the Atma and the dependence of the world on the Atma to a certain extent. In other words, you understand that this is more of a play, but it doesn't happen right away. It takes a while. But the stings of the tragedy become less and less, and you begin to see, yes, there is a lot of truth in it. The more I become stronger in myself, less dependent on the world, then the stings of tragedy don't affect me to that extent, and eventually not at all. So I think those ideas are what you're pointing out are correct. I don't see there's any big problem with that, but just some ideas in giving you some more detail about it.
Thank you, Guruji. That answered my question.
Virendraji, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, I will.
Hello,
Go ahead, Virendraji.
Vijayji. This is a question about creation. He created this world, and if you define Brahma, his definition is Satchidanand, and all this sorrow and other things are in this world. What is the reason for that? There used to be a Satyug where people were virtuous and there was only, experience of pleasantness and good. Why all this is, I'm saying karma is there. That is the principle you say behind, they say that behind this whole world, but why that? Why, if it is his nature is Satchidanand, he should have created only a world where there was pleasantness and happiness.
Yeah, those are good questions, great questions, and all of us have them. And I think we have talked quite a bit in our classes with respect to that. But let me summarize what our view is of regarding the question that you answered. And if for those of you, which was it? I think it was either, yeah, I think the Kaivalya class on Saturday, we went over this, and in other classes also. This also was a very good way for me to understand in the last few years the study of the Karika helped, the study of Rudram by Swami Maheshananji, lots of other ones, rereading of the Bhagavad Gita. So all of this culminated in my present thinking on that whole question that you raised, Virendra. And here's a brief summary of that. So what is talked about is that there are 5 basic things in the creation. One is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. 4th one is Bandhanam. And the 5th one is Moksha. So the Swarupa Jnanam of the whole world is Satyam Jnanam Anantam, Satchidanandaha, Asti Bhati Priyam. That's given in the Drikdrishya Viveka. That is a fundamental truth about everything, not just Ishvara, but the whole world, the whole you and I, everything. That is the truth about it. Not knowing the truth is bandhanam. And knowing that truth is moksha. And included in the bandhanam are all problems. And included in the moksha is independence from all problems. This is not created. This is something that needs to be really understood. If you ever go back to, I don't know if you were there in the details of this, as Gaudapada had taught in the third Karika of Mandukya Upanishad that we did about, I think almost like 2 years ago. You may want to go back and listen to it verse by verse. Gaudapada had pointed out that there is no creation possible. There is a complete absence of creation. So the very thought that Ishvara sat down one day and he said, let's do this, is not correct. There is no, and even though the Shastra actually sometimes talks about creation. See, this is the thing we need to understand. Shastra, including Karmakanda as well as Jnanakanda and so on, is very specific to the level of understanding of people. It will say things that will be negated later, only because we are not ready to jump all the way up to the end. And the end is there is no creation. This is the way things are. This is the nature of the cosmos. The nature of the cosmos, and I'm going to marry this concept with what I started with when I started this session, that there's only two things involved. Either you are looking at the anatma or you're looking at the atma. Either you're looking at the world or the paramatma. And so this thing is exactly the same thing, that if you don't know the nature of the whole cosmos, I would not even say creation. The nature of the whole cosmos is, truth is satyam jnanam anantam. If you don't know the truth, there are problems. If you know the truth, there is moksha. And so there is no why for it. This is the way. It is exactly like, we have given this example, but we have to really think about this. What fire is an appropriate question. Why there is fire is inappropriate. Why is there fire? Well, fire is part of the creation. That is how it is. Water is part of the creation. And so really speaking, ignorance of the truth, which gives rise to problems, is part of the so-called creation. It is really just the cosmos as it is. And so you cannot argue with this to a non-Vedantin, but as Vedantins, we should see the truth of this. Let us not spend a minute of our emotional energy trying to say, why did this happen and so on. This is the way the nature of the whole cosmos is. And it's a very beautiful, because the bandhanam is temporary and moksha is permanent. And if it would be the other way around, it will have a huge tragedy. It is not a tragedy. It is already temporary. It might take us several years to understand this, but really speaking, understanding the truth is moksha. And not knowing it, we have issues with tragedy and so on and so forth. So that's really kind of like an overall answer to what you were asking for.
Thank you for your answer, but still, it's just actually you can't answer the question. So we say that you are not understanding, so that's why you are in bondage and all that. But why not just be, everybody is, knowing and is a Jnani, and it's everybody is happy.
So that means that there is no, I mean, that's exactly that's the whole situation. But in the meantime, this is the play that it is. I think I gave one answer to, I'm just repeating myself. You were saying you already talked about that. But I thought that the most beautiful answer to this question was given by Swami Dayanandji. He said that, do you remember the example where there was a person from a village who went to Chennai and made a lot of money. And he was very fond of soccer. And so he funded a club with his money. And he used to stage all these soccer matches in Chennai. And one day, one of his uncles from the village, he was inviting him. He says, uncle, please come and please stay with me. And I want you to be my guest on this soccer match. And so the soccer match happened, and there were like thousands of spectators, and there were whistles and fouls, and one team won 2-1. And so he turned to his uncle and said, well, how did you enjoy this? He says, I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't understand why people had to get hurt, why they were whistles, why the referee was favoring one over the other, and why one team won and the other one lost. I don't understand. You said you have enough money, don't you? He said, yes. So why did you just have to give them one ball? Why didn't you give them 22 balls, and they would all be just doing it? Everybody would be happy. So he just put his hand on his head and he says, oh my God, I had never thought of that you would even have that kind of a situation. It all stemmed from the fact that there is, even sports is a very beautiful, I find sports is a very beautiful teacher of life. How we get involved with favoring one team and 49ers. And now we are so disappointed that 49ers have not made the Super Bowl. It's all because of our emotional attachment to just one team. The referee has none of that. And so it doesn't really matter who wins or loses or anything. So the whole cosmos is really a giant play of soccer, is what it is. And you cry, you laugh, you are disappointed, you are victorious and all that. And the end of that, there is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. And so it is all a big play. And this would not be there. We can say, why have this play? Well, that's exactly what happens in the nighttime. There is no play. But the whole life is a play. So that's really another way to look at it.
Thank you very much, Vijayji.
Sanjeev, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Sure. Thank you. Namaste, Vijayji. I don't know how much time we have. Mine was a very sort of vyavharik question. It goes around, I think Swami Dayanandji or one of the teachers had talked about, ego coming from the back door. And, I sort of experienced this myself, my actions and sometimes looking at others. And as an example, I'm working with an NGO, trying to help, people in low middle income countries. But time and time again, when, I'm in these meetings, it's very obvious that, you know, people have their own personal agendas and egos that they do. So I'm really looking for some advice on, you know, how to sort of address that individually. And, you know, what, and I know it's all transactional and vyavharik, but it's interesting. It almost is more uncomfortable to be in those situations because you feel like, you know, here you're trying to do the right thing and quote unquote helping, but really a lot of it is sort of a power play and ego stroke. So can you help me figure it out, please?
So you're saying that, let me ask you a couple of questions before I give you the right answer. You're saying that now these people that you're working with, are you an equal to them or are you their boss?
No, for the most part, equal, and actually a late entry to sort of the core group of people. And they're
Okay.
good people, but it's just that
Yes.
during discussions, it's very obvious that they have some unfilled need, I think.
Yes.
And perhaps, so I think, and they're using, it's almost like the other question that was about sort of this missionary spirit, you know?
Yes. Very much so.
Yeah.
So Sanjeev, this is the way things are. You know, I think that people are made human beings and they don't have a larger vision available to them, other than the fact that they are also helping in an NGO. They think that they are doing the right thing. But you're absolutely right. Hidden underneath that are some unmet needs. So that is the way things are. So I would say that in a subtle way, you can bring that out by saying, you know, by communicating your own feelings about it, that sometimes you can laugh about it in a situation and say, you know, sometimes I think I'm helping others, but maybe I'm helping myself. You know, and you can invoke that in a jocular way, but with the understanding that perhaps people would be a little bit more sensitive to for doing that. That's, I think, what you can do. But at the same time, be accepting of the fact that this is a huge problem, what you talk about, and you're not going to solve it overnight. So all you can do is to take some baby steps and in a very clever way, put yourself into that situation and say, you know, I sometimes thinking, how should we do this? Because, and then possibly at some point in time, become a little tougher. Even if there is a discussion going on or something like this, you can be more forceful and say that the right thing for us to do is to really remove ourselves from the situation. And I think that's the right thing. And do it in a way that is non-offensive, more convincing. And so that people would begin to appreciate your wisdom, but not flaunt it. So those are all the right kind of skills. But I think that the assumption that you have is the right one. Really, most of the time, we are much more concerned about our own self, even though we masquerade it as helping others. So that understanding is a very good one. But then how you communicate that and so on depends on your skills and your acceptance and all those kinds of things. Yeah.
Zarina, did you want to go ahead? Unmute yourself, please.
I will. Thank you. Nice to see everybody. Hari Om, Vijayji. And I have a question. I have a follow-up on Suresh's question as to what it is. It is the Viveka and the Vairagya that we would need to start off. But ultimately, I think it is Nididhyasnam that delivers the goods. And in Nididhyasana, it is when we set aside time to be ourselves and to meditate, to do Nididhyasana, but also then carry that through that all throughout the day, so that when we have instances in our life where we need to sort of tap into this information almost instantly, we can do that if we have carried those thoughts throughout, not just when we are doing the meditation, not just occasionally. And Viveka and Vairagya, of course, are always there, but it is finally the assimilation that delivers the goods, in my opinion.
I think that is correct. There's no question about that. That's exactly what needs to happen. And the more we, Nididhyasanam results in a personal experience that this is the right thing for me to do. This is the right thing for me to lead the life. And all the steps to it, the Shravanam and Mananam, are getting you to that point, but it isn't until you feel it, that this is me, this is what I am. And so then the prevalence of those thoughts throughout the day would be much better. So I think that's exactly right. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Kasabji, can you unmute yourself and ask a question, please? Kashyap,
Who is that? Sorry.
Kashyap Chopra, did you have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Oh,
Thank
hi.
you very much.
Yes.
Om Jai Shri Krishna. Namaste to everybody. Guruji, in last class you mentioned about, you are explaining Shariri and Sharir. And I mentioned from Bhagavad Gita, Dehino Asmin Yatha Dehe Kumaram Yomnam Jara. And you wanted me to contemplate on that. And during this week, when I was meditating and contemplating, and then suddenly one shloka, when I was reciting from Gita, the same word Sharini jumped up. Vasansi Jinani Yatha Vihai, Nuani Graha Nati Naro Prani, Tatha Shrirani. When that word came, I said, oh, wow, that's what Vijayji, you said, contemplate. So now this Sharirini came up, and same Sharirini in Vedas and Upanishad you were mentioning about.
Yes.
That was the thing I wanted to communicate to you.
Wonderful.
So contemplation is awesome. And your right, good advice helped me. And then the other question I have, you mentioned about like having a 7 days program, how far it is from here. And another thing, like luckily you said the same thing because you wanted Swamiji to take the class for 7 days and he wanted you to take the class for 7 days. So I was curious to know if like sometimes we, the students, are encouraged and put in the front line asking us, hey, what you have learned in last 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, why don't you tell you where you stand now? So then you judge us where we are. I mean, like that's what is done every class we have learned from grade 1 to whatever. Every 3 months there is a test, every 6 months there's test, every year there's an exam. So why these things are not done? That's my question.
Yeah. No, I think that, I think that in a way, you're right, the satsangs are useful because I think, as many of you have mentioned, it is not just learning from me, but from each other, sharing ideas. That's why some of the groupings that Zarina and Chola and others have been so useful. But during the class, given the priorities, it is better to assume that you are gaining from the knowledge that we are communicating, excuse me, and that you will work on your own issues and your own time and your own pace. Individually, we do communicate with, I spend a lot of time looking at your emails and responding to it and so on. So in the classroom, it is best to simply teach. And in that sense, the YouTube is useful because the traditional teaching is you do not interrupt the teacher in the middle of it, which, you know, in a Zoom, which is okay, but but the question answers come in the end. Anyway, I'm giving you a long answer to your question. But yes, there is, see, in the old days, this is what used to happen, which is really unfortunate. There will be a teacher, and there will be half a dozen students living with the teacher, 24 hours. And there's no more than a handful of students. And so the wisdom of the teacher will slowly percolate, but surely percolate. Swami Dayanand used to say that when he studied with Swami Taranandji in Haridwar, there were only like 5 or 6 students. And Swami Taranandji would know exactly where everybody is. So in one of the classes, so they were studying all these advanced courses with Sanskrit, you know, Brahma Sutra and so on. So in one of the classes, one of the students started to go to sleep, and he started snoring loudly. And so while the class is going on, so Swami Taranandji woke him up and said, "Suniye, ye sunne ki baat hai, sone ki baat nahi hai." This means that this is a matter of listening, not of sleeping. Anyway, the point is that in the old setting, there was intimacy, because this is a very subtle situation. We don't have that situation. And so, you know, at least when you used to have online classes, we were together for a while, but we're doing the best we can. So to offer a student details about the problems and so on, maybe not the best way to spend the time to do so. But in a satsang situation, yes, from time to time, we should be able to do that. Anyway, I will prepare a detailed proposal to you for going to Sailorsburg in June. I'm really hoping that many of you will please join me. I'm really looking forward to it. I've already started to think about what I'm going to teach, how am I going to teach, and how many people will be there. So I was going to announce it at the right time. I'm also hoping that the COVID will be better. So in the next few weeks, you will see a much more detailed proposal. And I hope that many of you travel with me for this very enjoyable camp for 1 week in Sailorsburg. So we'll see how that goes.
Guruji, we don't have any hands raised, so if anyone else has a question, please.
Can I just ask one other thing? What were the dates in June?
So it will be Saturday to Saturday, June 18th to the 25th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we negotiated, Zarina, we negotiated it because Shuddhatma wanted us to come in early April. And we said, no, it'll be a bit too cold. Can we do this? Swami, we also got involved. And this one week opened up, and I might as well just tell you that. So what I'm planning to do by way of the text is, I'm going to take 5 or 6 very effective verses, mantras from Sri Rudram. And based on really this book right here, this Sri Rudram. So this book is a very interesting one. What it is I must say, out of all the texts that I have studied in the last 10, 12 years, this has become a Bible for me, so to speak, Bible, in the sense that it really has given me a lot of satisfaction and insight into it. This book has 2 sections to it. So one is a verse by verse of the whole Rudram, all of the thing. And so there is a combination of, there are 2 books. One is the one by Swami Dayanandji, which is also there, and then this one here. So they are very comparable to each other and very complementary, not comparable, but complementary to each other. The second thing that Swami Maheshanji did was to give some public talks on 6 mantras out of them. Rudram has probably about 100 mantras, 200 mantras, but out of that, he has chosen 6 of them and gone into such depth. It is just amazing. So I'm planning that, I don't know if I can do all 6 of them, but I'll do as many as I can in those 7 days at the ashram. So that is my plan. Now, after the Brahma Sutra finishes, which will be in about 2 months' time, I will start the first part of the Rudram even here. But that is not those 6 ones that Swami Maheshananji did. So they'll be complementary in that sense. I'm also planning to ask Varanasi to send multiple copies of this. For those of you that are Hindi speaking, you can at least buy this or get this one way or the other. And of course, one of the main verses text I will use is Swami Dayanandji's. So anyway, that's the plan for Sailorsburg, and I will send it all that to you.
Thank you.
All right, with that.
What is that book you were showing, Vijayji?
Rudram, Sri Rudram.
No, that white book.
This is the white book, is the one which is published by the by Swami Maheshananji's publication in Varanasi. And I actually wrote to them recently if they have any copies, and they said, yes, we have plenty of copies. So I need to figure out how to give them the money and who will bring it. All of that has to be done. It's only 100 rupees, so it's a very inexpensive book. And I think many of you may already have it, because we got this about, I know Sudha is saying yes, so she probably has it. And maybe
I don't.
Also some other people.
I don't, but is it Maheshananji's book or what?
Yes. This is Rudram as explained by Swami Maheshananji.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. If there's no more questions, then we can say goodbye and with a small prayer. And I think if you find it's continued to be useful, we can hold it once a quarter for now. And then possibly we can even meet somewhere in Milpitas in another 2-3 months. And if not, then I'm very much hoping that you can join me in Sailorsburg in June. So let me just say a small prayer and then we will disband. Om Asato ma satkamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Goodbye.
Thank you.